Hello and welcome to the Heritage Llangwm podcast, episode number 6. I'm Heather Payton, and you join us at Great Nash Farm, a mile from the village at the start of our attempt to dig up Flemish treasure, digging for Llangwm, you might call it. We'll also be hearing from our MP Stephen Crabb, now of course Work and Pension Secretary.
I just think this whole project is really inspiring. It's very, very exciting. And what's really, really struck me is just how it's engaged so many people from the local community, giving up their time to be part of this really big and important collective effort.
Plus the new research that could finally reveal who the St. Jerome's effigies are.
It is definitely a jigsaw, but we are finding more and more of the pieces.
But first the dig. As you may know, the plan is to excavate an area of Great Nash Farm, site of a manor house built by Llangwm's 12th century Flemish founders. I'll be here during the 3 weeks of the dig with the more than 40 volunteers who've started by clearing the walled garden behind the farmhouse and are now marking out and digging trenches. What we'd love to find is anything that links to the Flemings. Pottery would be terrific. But it's early days, and joining me is James Meek, lead archaeologist for Dyfed Archaeological Trust. James, I suppose that makes you the Indiana Jones of Llangwm.
The phrase Indiana Jones, yeah. Well, I don't quite have the hat or the looks or the leather jacket or the whip, but I suppose so, in a way, yeah.
Tell me what you're doing here today.
Well, it's the second day we've been on site. Yesterday we just spent really doing some heavy gardening, removing brambles, getting rid of spoil tips and generally clearing the area ready for what we're doing today, which is a geophysical survey of the walled garden right next to Great Nash House. And we're using a magnetometer, which is measuring sort of very small variations in the magnetic field in the ground that get caused by underlying features, ditches, pits, post holes, fires, hearths, walls, anything. He says, hopefully we will find a lot of material in there. So.
And you've already found some bits and pieces. You've got a tray of them here. What have you got?
The best things we've had, again, just walking through the field, is we have 1, 2, 3 sherds of medieval pottery already. One of them's a little bit of a handle of probably a jug. Might be sort of fairly locally made material.
And how do you know that's something special? Because it just looks like a little lump of something indescribable to me.
Because I've seen lots of them.
Fair enough.
We sort of, yeah, you get your eye in, and when you look at the material, you can see where it's been fired in the middle and where it's been shaped around the outside. But yes, it is only a very small fragment of and sort of doing that time team thing of having one small bit of pottery and turning it into a massive medieval jug. But that does seem to fit very well with that. So, even just walking across the fields, it's looking hopeful. We're going to get some interesting material.
Grid number 1. As you're moving, try and anticipate letting go of the green button just before you hit the line. That's it, perfect.
Great!
She says perfect.
Hey guys, I did the perfect one.
Well, Alice Day from Dyfed Archaeology is showing one of the volunteers, Jane Mills, how to... what's she doing actually, Alice? What are you showing her?
I'm showing her how to walk at an even pace across a grid that we've set out in order to take a magnetic reading every metre exactly.
And she's got a thing she's holding in front of her. What is that?
That's called a fluxgate radiometer. That's the fancy word for it. It's a special type of magnetometer, and that is a special type of geophysical equipment for surveying archaeological features.
And it's quite big. It's a sort of H-shaped thing with a harness. Is it heavy, Jane?
No, not heavy at all.
Not heavy. Okay.
And the harness supports it anyway, so
Yeah.
it's not too bad. You just have to keep it upright.
So that's going to tell us what we dig for.
Yes, hopefully we can draw a picture by stitching together all the individual readings later. Well, actually, we're not going to do it. The very clever computer software is going to do it. And then hopefully when we look at that picture, we can see features that will not tell us directly what they are, but we can infer that they might be wall footings, or they might be ditches, or they might be circular pits, etc. This used to be a garden, so we're really hoping for some rubbish pits. And we're hoping that we are going to find some remains of building foundations as well.
Well, we're now at the beginning of week 2. The weather's turned a bit chilly, but we laid out a huge amount. Alice, roughly what sort of area do you think we laid out and surveyed?
In total, we've definitely surveyed more than 3 acres, so possibly getting on for half a hectare.
And you have loaded all the results into the laptop, and you've got a result here. You've got a pictorial representation of what we were seeing, what's under the ground, and you've printed it out. So tell me what we can see here. We've got quite a few lines, for example, on it. What are those?
One of them extends all the way into the small area where we're excavating, so we're definitely going to be targeting that with a trench.
And we've actually started digging trenches. We've marked out 2 big squares, oblongs, inside the walled garden to start with. Why have we put them there?
The first one is a reflection of this feature that is very striking in the field and continues over 40 metres or so, and it does actually continue into the small area, so we've put one in there.
And what would you expect we might find there?
We will hopefully see a ditch cut feature, and that will show up as a darker linear feature against the background of the subsoil, which will probably be lighter.
I'd better get back to digging with the others now.
Yes, we hope that.
Well, we're now halfway through the second week of the dig. It's a beautiful day, and there's almost, I think, a dozen of us digging away and travelling and matticking and all sorts of things. We've got 2 trenches on the go, and we've got another one that's almost a trench at this point. Emma, tell me what you're doing first of all.
Well, today I'm troweling through the trench, using a little trowel, and basically just trying to take off the first the first top 2 centimetres to get down and see what sort of features we can uncover. And we've got quite a few rocks and different things, and we're looking at different soil structures, and just trying to get some sort of picture of what is happening in this trench here.
And you're actually a marine biologist.
I am, in fact. Yeah, that's my first profession, is a marine biologist, but I've just moved to the area, and this is something I've always wanted to have a go at, looked at it as a hobby, and it's a really good way to get to meet the local people and, meet people in the community and try and help out and learn lots more. It's great.
And Jeff, you're reasonably new to this area as well, aren't you?
I moved in just a few months after Emma. I think we've both been looking at the same houses when we moved in. And similar reasons to Emma, it's nice to meet local people, and this dig's quite interesting here. We've got, I think, as you said, different soil types. It's quite gritty just where Emma is now, yet just over here it's quite soft, quite decent soil.
You've got a worm there.
We have a worm, and we've got some fairly sizable rocks coming out. We don't know if this is a fallen wall. We're not sure. We found 1 or 2 bits of medieval pottery, but not a lot on this side. Okay. Yeah.
Jude and David digging a new trench. Hey, this is hard work, isn't it, David?
Shut up. Yes.
So this is the very beginning, and you're using a mattock, and I have to say I've never even seen a mattock before. So this is it's rather nasty looking instrument, but it doesn't half go through the ground.
It's a very ancient tool.
Jude, you're not at all new to archaeology, are you?
No, I'm not.
Tell me about it.
I've been doing voluntary archaeology for about 5 years, sometimes as much as 13 weeks a year. So,
what's the most interesting one you've done?
Well, I like all of them. They're all in Pembrokeshire. They're all different. The most interesting one I think I find is Nevern, because it's a Norman castle, but possibly it kept changing hands between the Welsh and the Normans, and the reason it's so interesting is it was built in 1106 and demolished in 1196. So it kind of is a benchmark for the 12th century, so it's just brilliant. So
I won't stop you, go ahead. Well, it's the Friday of the second week. Something is emerging from the earth. Jim, what is it?
We seem to have quite a large chunk of a medieval pot. Looks like a jar from the rim that we can see. What is it? Must be about 8 inches across at the top. I suppose it would have been when it was whole. And it's in about 3 pieces, but they're in very large pieces and they're all together. So since it was dropped in the ground, it hasn't moved very far till today, should we say, for about the last 500 years. So
and Rob is excavating it very carefully. Are you going to take it out? Because there must be a huge danger of the whole thing disintegrating when you do that.
the medieval pottery we've had out elsewhere on the site hasn't actually been too fragile. So although, I mean, it's not going to come out as one piece, as I say, there are already 3 breaks that we can see in it. It will come out in 3 bits, maybe a few more, but six, there you go. He's seen 6 cracks in it. So it'll likely come out in 6 bits. What we might try and do is slice it from underneath and try and keep it whole as it's lifted and put it straight into a fines tray and keep it secure until we can clean it all up back in the office.
So watch this space.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, we're almost at the end of it. That's quite sad, really, after 3 weeks. Jim, you've actually found some other bits and pieces. You told us earlier about the top, as it turned out, of the medieval jar. You've found other medieval goods.
In the other trench, actually, we found a large bit of the base of looks like another cooking pot, and some of the side of it. It's a bit green glazed as well, which is rather nice. And I wasn't expecting a lot from that ditch, so yeah, quite pleased with that.
And something rather earlier as well.
Yes, in Trench 1, where we thought we had finished with the medieval archaeology at one point. I think it was yesterday I said to Alice, I think I might just dig down just a little bit, just to confirm it's natural. And we've only dug a small hole, and we've got quite a large group of Mesolithic flints out of it. Which is rather excellent because it all looks like it's undisturbed, lying directly underneath the medieval archaeology in a soil which hasn't been disturbed for 8,000 years or so, yeah.
So at the end of it all, successful, do you think?
I certainly think it is. I mean, having the wall that we've got a wall line, it's looking like it's probably a building. Although we can't date the wall exactly, we've had medieval pots on it, around it, but none in it. But I would think it's going to be medieval. It gives us an indication then that there were other structures in this walled garden. The amount of pottery we're getting is great, really. Lots of them are cooking pots, lots of them are sooted, so they were used cooking pots. They've been burnt and, presumably overburnt, and then they've broken, and so they've been thrown out with the rubbish, and that's what we're finding. But that's perfect for being next to Great Nash.
Nothing with Made in Flanders stamped on it.
Well, there's still a hope that once we've got all the pottery washed and we've sent it off to a pottery expert, they may come back and say, this bit is imported. I think we have had a couple of bits that were Bristol. There was one bit that's definitely a German one. So who knows?
James Meek ending our report from Great Nash Farm, where the trenches we worked so hard at are simply now being filled in. James has been keeping a dig diary together with photographs, and we'll put a link to that on the Heritage Llangwm website, heritagelangwm.org.uk, if you're listening on one of the other links. During the second week of the dig, we had a very distinguished visitor, the Preseli Pembrokeshire MP Stephen Crabb, who was taking time off from his day job of Work and Pensions Secretary. Stephen also visited the church to see the work there and met the tapestry stitchers in the village hall. So I asked him what he made of it all.
I just think this whole project is really inspiring. It's very, very exciting. And what's really, really struck me is just how it's engaged so many people from the local community, whether that's involved at the tapestry end or here at the dig, seeing so many people giving up their time to be part of this really big and important collective effort to rediscover something of our history in Pembrokeshire, of who we are, our identity.
Well, it's also interesting, we think, because it's remarkable how little is known about the Flemings.
Well, it's a kind of a bit of a secret that we have here in Pembrokeshire, our historic roots that take us all the way back to the Norman conquest, and this group of Flemish people who helped William the Conqueror out, helped him take the crown, and as their reward were given part of Pembrokeshire. It's a very interesting bit of our history, and it's shaped who we are still today, linguistically, culturally, socially. It's a fascinating thing, and if we can learn a bit more about it through digs like this, the archaeology project, then I just think this is going to be benefiting the whole of the community.
Stephen Crabb on his visit to the Heritage Llangwm project in all its variety. We've had another piece of excitement over the past month. We've finally discovered the identity of at least one of the effigies in St Jerome's. Both our history experts, Rhiannodd Preback and Heritage Llangwm's Liz Rawlings, reached the same conclusion at the same time. We spoke to Rhiannodd last month, and it was her re-evaluation of dates then that set Liz off on a research marathon.
I sort of went ferreting about different sorts of resources, and I found that there was Sir Robert, who was Llangwm, and he actually died around the 1350 mark. And that seemed to fit in absolutely with the date. The fact that he was here, the fact that he was a knight, the fact that he was actually buried, died around the right sort of time to fit in with the effigy, that seemed to be pretty conclusive.
Looking at the whole thing, it is a jigsaw, and this fits very neatly into it. I mean, it's not, I suppose you'd have to say it's not conclusive proof, but it's jolly good circumstantial evidence, isn't it?
I think it's probably as near as we can get, because when you've got primary sources that actually give you legal documentation, for example, as in witnesses to deeds or actual title deeds themselves, or somebody being called for night service, when you have actual references like that, then you tend to go with it.
And just thinking back again, Sir Robert, what relation was he to Godbert?
Now, he was Godbert's great-great-grandson, but there might also be another great in there. It's quite difficult when the family insisted on using the same names for every generation. So yes, it's still a work in progress, and I suspect it will still take quite a lot of effort and energy to have the best possible picture we can. As you said, it is definitely a jigsaw, but we are finding more and more of the pieces.
Liz Rawlings, and while Liz was ferreting around, Rhiannodd was also following up leads in documents including inquisitions post-mortem, surveys drawn up when someone who owns land dies.
In this inquisition, I found a record of a Robert de la Roche, who held a small amount of land, but he was described as as being dead, and his heir was a miner in the Queen's wardship. Now, this made my ears prick up immediately, because I realised, of course, that this would assume that Robert de la Roche had died recently, so that would make his date of death fit in quite nicely with the date of the effigy in the 1340s. But more importantly, because his heir was a miner and had been taken into wardship, this would give a motive, quite a strong motive, for commemorating Robert de la Roche. The reason being that an heir being a minor and not being able to inherit his estates directly means that this causes a bit of a family crisis, a hiatus in the descent of the lands, of the estates. So being taken into wardship meant that the revenues from the estates would then pass to the crown, and the child would be brought up at court as well. His marriage would obviously be arranged at court, and so he becomes a valuable asset, and he gets taken away from his family. His mother was probably still living, but she had no legal right to bring him up, hence being taken into wardship. So this does represent a possible problem for the family. And what the erection of the effigy may have been doing was to underline the fact that in the local area, the de Roches were still the top dogs. You know, there may be this hiatus in the family. The heir may not be present. He might have gone to London to live at court. And so they may not be physically visible But putting the effigy there with all that display of heraldry is going to remind not just the local population and surrounding lords of manors who might want to get their fingers in the De La Roche pie, as it were, but it's also going to act as a kind of an official reminder for the authorities that this is De La Roche land, that this is the De La Roche estate. Here we have, a long-standing dynasty who have been here for several centuries, hence the relationship with the female effigy of an earlier date. And, you're certainly underlining the fact that once this heir attains his majority, this is his estate, this is his land, this is his territory, it belongs to him.
Rhiannon Breback and Liz Rawlings solving the mystery of at least one of the effigies. We still, of course, don't know for sure the identity of the female effigy, but Liz and Rhiannon are on the case and believe it might be Robert's granny Margaret. That's it until next month. As always, thanks to the people who make the Heritage Llangwm project possible, the Heritage Lottery Fund and our other supporters. And thanks to you for listening.